My son-in-law thought he was holding a king's ransom in his hands, a fortune that would save him from ruin. He had no idea the sapphires were glass, the diamonds were paste, and the dangerous man he owed $1 million to had just received a check, signed with my name. Hi everyone, I'm Grandma Sofia. My name is Sofia de la Croix. I am 79 years old, and I am from the beautiful, historic city of Charleston, South Carolina. This is a story about betrayal. But more than that, it's a story about a chess game. A long, quiet, and painful game that my son-in-law didn't even know he was playing. It is a secret I have kept perfectly for over a year now. Even my own daughter, my sweet Anna, does not know the full truth. She knows her husband was a fool and a thief. She does not know that I, her mother, was the one who orchestrated his downfall so perfectly that he never even saw the checkmate coming. Gosh, it is a difficult thing to admit you are capable of such calculation, such cold-blooded strategy. For the longest time, I was shrouded in a shame that was not mine. When you are made to feel like the victim, when your love and trust are used as weapons against you, you begin to think you are the fool. You begin to question your own judgment. It is a terrible, suffocating feeling. I am telling my story now because I have finally shed that shame. I have learned that a quiet life does not mean a weak one, and that a gentle heart can still house a spine of steel. And I am telling it for anyone out there who has ever been underestimated. Before I begin, I would be so very grateful if you would lend me your strength. Please, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Your support is a great comfort. It gives this old woman the courage to open the vault of her memory and lay out all the pieces of this complicated game. Thank you, my dears. Your kindness is a precious jewel to me. My life truly began the day I met my husband, my Victor. Oh, he was a man larger than life. A brilliant businessman with a poet's soul. He built an empire in shipping, but his true passion was me. Our life together was a grand adventure. It was a life filled with laughter and travel and dancing until dawn. We were a team, in everything. But of all the gifts he gave me, of all the treasures we collected, one was more precious than any other. It was for our 25th anniversary. He had just closed the biggest deal of his career, and he told me he wanted to give me something that would last forever, a symbol of our life together. He took me out onto the balcony. The air was warm and smelled of jasmine. He opened a small, dark blue velvet box, and inside, oh my goodness, inside was a necklace and a pair of earrings. They were sapphires, the deepest, most brilliant blue I had ever seen, like the color of the ocean at midnight. They were surrounded by a constellation of flawless diamonds. My father always called my mother the Star of the North, he whispered, his voice thick with emotion as he fastened the necklace around my neck. The stones were cool against my skin. You, my love, are my star, my constant. So I shall call these the Stars of Sofia. He held my hands and looked me in the eye. This is our legacy, Sofia, a symbol of the beautiful life we've built. It is for you always, and one day it will be for our Anna. That jewelry, it was never about the money. It was about the memory. It was the distillation of 50 years of love and partnership into something I could touch, something I could hold. It was a piece of my husband's heart. We had one child, our daughter, Anna. She is the gentlest soul I have ever known. She has my love of art and her father's kind heart, but none of his fierce, protective nature. She's an artist, a painter. She lives in a world of color and emotion, a world where everyone is assumed to be good, where trust is a gift freely given, not a thing to be earned. She is, I'm afraid, a bit of a fool for love. And then, 5 years ago, she brought home Julian. He was an investment advisor. And he was perfect. Too perfect. He was devastatingly handsome, impeccably dressed, and he spoke with a smooth, easy confidence that could charm a snake out of its skin. He showered my Anna with a kind of intense, focused attention that she had never known, and she blossomed under his gaze. The first time he came to our home for dinner, he was a master of charm. He didn't look around the room with an appraiser's eye, like so many others. He looked at me. He asked about my life with Victor. He listened, truly listened, to my stories. He made me feel like the most fascinating woman in the world. He was particularly interested in the stories behind our collections. "Oh, Sophia, you must tell me the story of this painting," he'd say. And I, so happy to see my daughter loved, so eager to share my memories of Victor, I would tell him everything. I even told him the story of the Stars of Sofia. I showed him the jewels. He looked at them, not with a greedy gleam, but with what appeared to be a deep, historical reverence. "They are magnificent," he breathed, looking at them under the light. "A piece of history, a piece of your love story. They should be in a museum." He looked at me, his eyes full of what I thought was sincere admiration. "You and Victor, you built an incredible legacy." He was so clever. He understood that the key to my heart was not to admire my things, but to admire my love for my husband. He became a trusted friend. He and Anna married a year later, in a beautiful ceremony in my garden. I thought my daughter had found her own Victor. I thought our family's legacy was safe. I didn't realize he wasn't admiring the legacy. He was studying it. He was learning its weaknesses. He saw my deep, sentimental attachment to my past, and my daughter's gentle, trusting nature. He wasn't marrying into our family. He was executing a corporate takeover, and he was just waiting for the right moment for a hostile bid. The first year of their marriage was a dream. Julian was the perfect son-in-law. He was attentive, he was charming, and he managed to ingratiate himself into every aspect of my life. He didn't make grand, obvious changes. His methods were far more subtle, more insidious. It was a campaign waged with kindness, a slow, methodical poisoning with a sweet taste. He started with my finances. As an investment advisor, he was, of course, deeply interested in my portfolio. "Sophia, my love," he'd say, calling me by the same affectionate term Victor used to use, a small, subtle usurpation. "I was just looking over your accounts. The man who manages them is fine, but he's old school. His returns are conservative. I could be doing so much more for you, for Anna's future, for the future of this family's legacy." He spoke of our legacy now. He had inserted himself into the narrative. And Anna, my sweet, trusting Anna, would just beam at him. "Isn't he brilliant, Mother? He's so good at this sort of thing. You should let him help." So, I did. I was old, I was tired, and I wanted my daughter to be happy. I signed the papers that made him a co-manager of my investment accounts. I thought I was giving him a responsibility. I didn't realize I was giving him the keys to the kingdom. His next target was my relationship with my daughter. He did it so cleverly, I barely noticed it happening. He never criticized me to Anna. Instead, he would praise me in a way that subtly infantilized me. "Oh, what a wonderful story, Sophia," he would say after I'd finished. He would then turn to Anna and say with a soft, affectionate chuckle, "Your mother is such a treasure. A beautiful, precious thing we must protect." He wasn't calling me strong or wise. He was calling me a fragile object, a thing. He was creating a narrative where I was no longer a capable, independent woman, but a treasure that needed his and Anna's protection. And slowly, Anna began to see me that way too. She started treating me with a gentle, patronizing care, as if I were a delicate piece of porcelain that might break. The true focus of his quiet, patient siege, however, was always the jewels, the Stars of Sofia. He became their unofficial curator. He insisted they were not safe in my old bedroom safe. "A simple home safe is no match for a modern burglar, Sophia," he'd said, his face a mask of grave concern. "A treasure like that, it needs proper protection." He arranged to have a new state-of-the-art safe installed in the wall of the study, a safe to which, of course, he knew the combination. "For insurance purposes," he'd explained. He would often ask me to take them out. He would sit at my late husband's desk, a jeweler's loupe in his hand, and he would examine them, his touch a little too familiar, a little too possessive. "Extraordinary," he would murmur, looking up at me. "The craftsmanship. The history." They are the heart of this family, aren't they? He was not just admiring them. He was studying them. He was memorizing every facet, every flaw, every detail of their setting. The crisis, the event that ripped the mask from his face and revealed the grasping, desperate monster beneath, began with a series of bad investments. His own investments, not mine. The details were murky, but I began to overhear hushed, frantic phone calls he would have in the study late at night. Words like margin call and liquidation and deadline drifted through the closed doors. The smooth, confident charm began to crack, replaced by a raw, nervous energy. He was a man in trouble, a man drowning in debt, and a drowning man will grasp at anything to save himself. The breaking point came on a Tuesday afternoon. He came into the drawing room where I was reading. His face was pale, his hands were trembling slightly. The polished charm was gone. He looked desperate. "Sophia," he began, his voice strained. "We need to talk." He told me a convoluted story about a once-in-a-lifetime investment opportunity, a chance to double, even triple, our family's fortune in a matter of weeks. But it requires significant, immediate cash injection. "I've managed to liquidate some of your more accessible assets," he said, his eyes not quite meeting mine. "But it's not enough. We're still short, about $1 million short." I just looked at him. I already knew where this was going. He took a deep breath. "The jewels," he said, his voice a low whisper. "The Stars of Sofia. Sophia, they're just sitting in that safe, gathering dust. They're a non-performing asset. If we could just use them as collateral, just for a few weeks, I can secure the loan we need. And then, once the deal goes through, we'll get them right back. No one will ever have to know." I felt a chill so profound it seemed to freeze the very marrow in my bones. He was asking me to gamble with my husband's heart, with our legacy, for one of his get-rich-quick schemes. "No," I said. My voice was quiet, but it was absolute. His face for a second registered a pure, uncomprehending shock. He had never heard that word from me before. He had always gotten his way. "What?" he stammered. "The answer is no, Julian," I said, my voice as cold and as hard as the diamonds in that necklace. "The jewels are not an asset. They are a memory. They are not for sale. They are not for collateral. The discussion is over." And then I saw it. The mask didn't just slip, it shattered. The charming, sophisticated, loving son-in-law evaporated, and in his place was a cornered, desperate animal. His face twisted into a grotesque mask of rage and disbelief. "You foolish old woman," he hissed, his voice a low, venomous snarl. "You don't understand anything, do you? You're sitting on a fortune that could save this family, and you're too sentimental, too stupid to use it. They're just rocks. They're meaningless." "They are not meaningless to me," I said, standing up, my own anger rising to meet his. "Well, they should be," he shouted, his voice cracking. "Because without them, we are ruined. I am ruined. Do you understand that? Ruined." He stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind him. I stood there, my heart hammering against my ribs, the sound of his words echoing in the silent room. "They're just rocks." He had finally shown me his true soul. He had shown me the utter contempt he had for me, for my husband, for everything we had built. I knew then what he was going to do. He was a desperate man, and he would do a desperate thing. He would not ask again. He would take them. But as I stood there, a strange, cold calm settled over me. He thought he knew everything about those jewels. He had studied them for years, but he had forgotten one crucial detail. He had forgotten the story I had told him in his first week with our family. Years ago, my Victor, ever the prudent man, had been worried about a string of high-profile jewel thefts in Charleston. He was terrified that the Stars of Sofia would be stolen. So, he had a secret made. He had hired the finest jeweler in Paris, a man who had worked for royalty, to create a perfect, flawless replica. A copy so exact, so perfect in its detail, that only a master gemologist with the proper equipment could tell the difference. The real jewels were kept in a humble, secure vault at the bank. The ones in the safe, the ones Julian had been studying, the ones I wore on special occasions. They were beautiful, but they were paste. They were worthless. He thought he was about to steal a king's ransom. He had no idea he was about to steal a handful of glass. A plan began to form in my mind, a quiet, elegant, and devastatingly simple plan. He was going to steal the jewels to pay off a dangerous debt. Fine. I would let him. And then I would make a little visit to the man he owed money to. And I would pay that debt myself, with the money from the sale of the real Stars of Sofia. The game was afoot. I did not have to wait long. Desperate men do not have the luxury of patience. 2 nights after our confrontation, the house was still and silent. Anna, my sweet, trusting daughter, was out of town at an artist's retreat, a trip Julian had conveniently encouraged her to take. It was just him and me in that big, quiet house. I knew this would be the night. I went to bed at my usual time, but I did not sleep. I lay in the dark, my ears straining, listening to the house settle around me. Around 2 a.m, I heard it. A faint, almost imperceptible creak of a floorboard in the hallway, followed by the softest click of a door opening downstairs. It was the door to the study. He was making his move. I didn't move. I didn't make a sound. I simply lay in my bed and pictured his every action. I pictured him opening the safe, his hands trembling with a mixture of fear and greedy anticipation. I pictured him taking out the velvet box. I pictured the look of triumph on his face as he opened it and saw the glittering, worthless glass and paste shining up at him in the dark. He would think he had just stolen his salvation. He was so clever, my son-in-law. But he was not wise. He saw the jewels, but he did not understand their true value or their true nature. He thought he was stealing a treasure. In reality, he was stealing a prop, a piece of a much grander play that I was now directing. The next morning, he was a different man. The desperation was gone, replaced by a nervous, twitchy energy. He was trying to act normal, but he couldn't quite manage it. He was overly solicitous, his charm brittle and false. "Good morning, Sofia," he chirped, his smile too wide. "Did you sleep well?" "Like a baby, Julian. Thank you," I said, my voice serene. He was waiting for me to discover the theft. He was waiting for the scream, the panic, the accusations. But they never came. I went about my day as if nothing had happened. This, I knew, would unnerve him more than any confrontation. My silence was his first punishment. My own plan began the moment he left the house that morning. My first call was not to the police. It was to my jeweler, an old and trusted family friend. "Robert, dear," I said. "It's Sophia de la Croix. I have a rather delicate matter to discuss. I need you to arrange a private, very discreet sale." My second call was to Mr. Harrison, my lawyer, to inform him of the name of the man Julian owed money to, a rather unsavory property developer with a reputation for being unforgiving. Julian, in his panicked phone calls, had not been as quiet as he thought. The real Stars of Sofia were even more beautiful than I remembered. As I held them in my hands for the last time, I felt a pang of deep, profound sadness. I was selling a piece of my heart, a piece of my history. But it was no longer just a symbol of love. It had become a weapon. And I knew, with a certainty that settled deep in my bones, that my victor would have approved. He would have appreciated the cold, clean, beautiful logic of it. He would have called it a brilliant business move. The sale was handled quickly and quietly, through a private collector in Europe. The sum was substantial. More than enough. The trap was now baited. All I had to do was wait for Julian to make his next move. He grew more and more agitated as the days passed. My continued silence was driving him mad. He had expected an explosion, a crisis. Instead, he got nothing. He couldn't understand why I hadn't noticed the jewels were missing. He began to second-guess himself. Had he been so clever that I truly hadn't noticed? Or was I playing a game he didn't understand? Anna came home from her retreat, and he was forced to keep up his performance in front of her. but I could see the strain, the fear in his eyes. He was a man sitting on a ticking time bomb. The final piece of my plan was the most elegant and the most cruel. It was an act of theater. I decided to host a small dinner party for a few of my oldest friends. And I asked Anna to wear the jewels. "But Mother," she said, her eyes wide. "The replica? They're so beautiful, but you've never let anyone else wear them." "I know, my dear," I said, patting her hand. "But you are not just anyone. You are the future of this family. It's time. Your father would have wanted it." The look on Julian's face when Anna told him was a picture of pure, abject terror. He couldn't tell her the truth without revealing his crime. He couldn't stop her from wanting to wear them. He was caught in a trap of his own making. He made a dozen excuses. The clasp was loose. The insurance needed to be updated. It was too much for a simple dinner party. But I had an answer for everything. I would have the clasp checked. The insurance was perfectly fine, and it was never too much to honor her father's memory. The night of the dinner party arrived. Julian was a ghost at the table, his face ashen, his hands trembling. He barely spoke a word. My friends all commented on how beautiful Anna looked, how magnificent the jewels were. And then I set the final piece of the trap in motion. I turned to my oldest friend, a woman who had known me since I was a girl. "Eleanor," I said, my voice carrying across the table. "Doesn't Anna look radiant? And the Stars of Sofia? You know, I was just thinking, I am getting old, and these beautiful things should be worn. I think it's time I had them formally appraised again. For the children. I shall call Robert the jeweler tomorrow morning." I watched Julian's face. Every drop of blood drained from it. He knew what a formal appraisal would mean. It would mean the discovery that the jewels were fake. It would mean the discovery of his theft. He thought I was about to expose him, right there, in front of everyone. He stood up so abruptly his chair almost toppled over. I'm not feeling well," he stammered, and practically fled from the room. He thought he had reached the end. He had no idea the real checkmate was still to come. He had committed a crime to pay a debt. He had no idea that I, the sentimental old woman he had so foolishly underestimated, had already paid it for him. The trap wasn't just about exposing his theft. It was about what would happen next. After my little performance at the dinner table, a new kind of quiet fell over the house. It was not the quiet of peace, but the taut, humming silence of a wire stretched to its breaking point. Julian avoided me. He was a ghost in his own home, his face pale and haggard. He was trapped. He knew I was aware of the theft, but he didn't know how I knew or what I planned to do. My silence, my refusal to confront him directly, was a far greater torture than any accusation could have been. He thought the dinner party was my opening move, a threat to expose him. He spent the next 2 days in a state of frantic, paranoid terror, waiting for the other shoe to drop. He was waiting for a call from the police or from a lawyer. He was waiting for me to tell Anna. But the call never came. I remained serene and silent. The real checkmate did not arrive with a policeman at the door. It arrived in a plain, unassuming envelope delivered by a courier on a Thursday morning. It was addressed to him. I was in the drawing room, arranging flowers, when he opened it. I watched him from the corner of my eye. His hands trembled as he tore it open. He read the single page inside, and I watched as his face, already so pale, turned a shade of gray I had never seen on a human being before. He didn't shout. He didn't rage. He simply made a small, choking sound and sank into a nearby chair as if his bones had turned to dust. The letter was not from me. It was not from the police. It was from Mr. Silas Croft, the notoriously ruthless developer to whom Julian owed $1 million. And the letter was very simple. It was a receipt. It stated that his outstanding debt of $1 million had been paid in full, the transaction settled by an anonymous third party. It wished him well in his future endeavors. He stared at the letter, his mind, his clever, scheming mind, frantically trying to understand. Paid in full? By who? Why? This wasn't the move of an enemy trying to expose him. This was something else entirely. something he couldn't comprehend. And then, I made my final move. I walked calmly over to him. I looked down at his shattered form. And I spoke, my voice gentle and quiet. "It seems your financial troubles are over, Julian," I said softly. He looked up at me, his eyes wide with a dawning, horrified understanding. "You," he whispered, his voice a dry rasp. "It was you, but how? The jewels, they're worthless." "The ones you stole are worthless, yes," I said, allowing myself a small, sad smile. "Paste and glass. A rather brilliant copy, don't you think? But the real Stars of Sofia, they were quite valuable. Enough to settle your debts, it seems, with a little left over." "Mine." He just stared at me, his mouth agape. He was a chess player who had just been checkmated in a way he had never imagined was possible. He had been playing for the queen, and he hadn't realized I had a second hidden queen on the board the entire time. "Why?" he finally choked out. "Why would you pay my debt?" "Because, Julian," I said, and my voice was no longer gentle. It was as cold and as clear as a diamond. "My daughter's name, the name of this family, was tied to your debt. Your disgrace would have been her disgrace, and I would not allow that. I did not save you. I simply cauterized a wound. I paid to have a sickness cut out of our lives. You are no longer indebted to Mr. Croft. You are, however, indebted to me. But I do not want your money." I paused, letting the weight of it all settle on him. "I want you to pack a single bag," I continued. "I want you to write a letter to my daughter, telling her you are leaving her, that you have met someone else. You will not tell her the truth. You will not burden her with your crimes. You will give her a clean break. A simple story of a failed marriage. You will do this one last decent thing. And then you will walk out of this house, and you will never, ever contact me or my daughter again. If you do, Mr. Harrison has a lovely thick file on your activities, and Mr. Croft, I imagine, would be very interested to learn that you tried to pay him with a worthless pile of glass." He looked at me, and in his eyes I saw the full and complete understanding of his defeat. He was a proud man, and I had not just taken his money or his power. I had taken his narrative. I had left him with nothing. He had no moves left to make. He did exactly as I told him. He wrote the letter. He packed his bag. He walked out of my house, a ghost of the charming man who had walked in 5 years earlier. He simply vanished. Anna was heartbroken, of course. She believed his letter. She grieved for her failed marriage. But she is strong, my Anna. Stronger than she knows. And her gentle heart, freed from his constant subtle manipulation, began to heal. She is painting again. Her colors are brighter now. She and I, we are a team again. The Reed team, as my husband used to say. Our legacy is safe. I learned that the greatest weakness of a predator is their inability to understand any value other than money. Julian saw a necklace. He did not see the love, a history, the cunning of the man who had commissioned it, and the woman who wore it. He saw a treasure, but he did not see its true worth. I sold a memory to save my family. It was a painful transaction, but a necessary one. The Stars of Sofia are gone now. But the love they represented, the strength my victor instilled in me, that is a legacy no one can ever steal. So if you are out there, and you are facing an opponent who seems to have all the power, who seems to have you trapped, remember this, old woman. Do not play their game. Play your own. Use what they cannot see. Your history, your secrets, your love. Sometimes, the most powerful move on the board is the one your opponent never, ever sees coming. Thank you for joining me for this rather intricate story. It is a good reminder that the most important family jewels are the ones we carry in our hearts. If you have enjoyed this tale, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and press the notification bell for more stories. And in the comments below, please feel free to share a story about a time when a secret turned out to be a strength. Love you all. This is Grandma Sofia, and I'll see you in the next story.